This is ILTV on the hour. We are live here in Israel, bringing the biggest headlines from the region. It is currently 2 p.m. here in Israel and 7 a.m. in New York. I'm Shosh Bedrosian, and today is day 682 of the war in Gaza. Let's get into all the top headlines right now. First off, Israel is set to approve the plan for the next stage of the war, according to the IDF chief of staff, as the IDF sets the stage in the war to take over Gaza City militarily, a Hamas stronghold. Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, the IDF chief of staff, actually visited the Gaza Strip on Sunday morning, saying the current operation, Gideon's Chariots, has achieved its objectives, and Hamas no longer poses the same capabilities it had before the operation. He also reiterated that the IDF has the moral duty to bring the hostages home, both alive and fallen. Zamir told troops on the ground in Gaza yesterday that the next phase of the operation will continue to enhance strikes against Hamas in Gaza City until its, quote, decisive defeat. Hundreds of thousands of residents will be evacuated from Gaza City. During a visit, like we said, to the IDF Southern Command, Zamir said the army would soon move to the next stage of Operation Gideon's Chariots and will continue to deepen the damage on Hamas in Gaza City until its defeat. Zamir said the current campaign was another layer in a long-term planned strategy with a multi-arena perspective aiming to strike all elements of the Iranian-led area. The aim is reportedly to besiege Gaza City and gain full control of it by October 7th, 2 years after the Hamas attack that, of course, sparked this horrific war that we are still in. Now, the operation will reportedly include 4 divisions and additional reserve brigades involving tens of thousands of reservists. Now, Hamas continues its attempts to attack Israel. The IDF intercepted a rocket from central Gaza toward the kibbutz Alomim area alongside the border. The rocket was intercepted by air defense systems, according to the military. About 500,000 people are also demanding for the release of the hostages. The hostages family forum say that 500,000 people attended last night's rally in Tel Aviv, and that about 1 million people actually took part in the nationwide protest demanding the government reach a deal to free the 50 hostages still in Gaza, both living and dead, that are still held by Hamas terrorists for 682 days. Although at this point in time, it's important to note the ball is currently in Hamas's court, according to reports, as they still haven't accepted any deal that's on the table. There was no official estimate of the crowd size, but it appeared to be one of the largest rallies since the start of the war. Other major protests actually took place in Jerusalem, Haifa, Beersheba, and other cities as well, with protesters often blocking roads and highways demanding an end to the war. Now, before last night's mass rally in Tel Aviv, at least 38 protesters had been arrested and several others were reportedly arrested during overnight protests. We're also learning about new hostage developments at this point in time. There is new video of hostage Matan Zangauker. A video of the hostage was released actually by his family as these protests were happening in real time. In this video clip, Matan actually pleads with the Israeli public and government for help to return home and describes his severe physical and psychological deterioration in captivity. The family of hostage Zangauker decided to release this video of their son, like we said, just as these nationwide strikes were happening. They believe that it was actually filmed months ago, and it was actually obtained by the IDF during operations happening inside of Gaza. It's also unclear how long Zangauker's family has been in possession of this video, which was never released by Hamas, but reports suggest the video could have been taped at the beginning of the war. His mother, Avi Melamed, addressed the protesters and said this. Take a listen.
שורף לי הלב מרוב געגוע. הלב שלי שרוף כולו בגלל מתן שלי. מתן, אני, עם שלם, אנחנו עושים את כל מה שאנחנו יכולים בשבילך, בשביל כל החטופים והחטופה. אז מתן ביקש מקודם בסרטון רעש. תנו למתן רעש! מתן שלי, המבט השקט שלך בסוף הסרטון מלווה אותי כשאני מתהפכת במיטה בלילות. אני מדמיינת אותך מביט לי בעיניים, וכואב לי. כואב לי, שורף לי בנשמה מרוב געגוע. שורף לי שאני לא יכולה לחבק, לא יכולה לשמוע, ולא יכולה להחזיק אותך.
You can just see those mass crowds inside of Tel Aviv Hostages Square there. We're also hearing that Prime Minister Netanyahu is also responding to that nationwide strike, saying that the rally only makes Hamas harden its positions, makes the return of the hostages much more difficult. The Prime Minister insisted that if Israel ends the war now, it will ensure a repeat of the October 7th horrors.
אלה שקוראים היום לסיום המלחמה ללא הכרעת החמאס, לא רק שמקשיחים את עמדת החמאס ומרחיקים את שחרור חטופינו, הם גם מבטיחים שזוועות ה7 באוקטובר יחזרו על עצמם שוב ושוב, ושבנינו ובנותינו יצטרכו להילחם שוב ושוב במלחמת אין קץ. לכן, גם כדי לקדם את שחרור חטופינו, וגם כדי להבטיח שעזה לא תהווה יותר איום על ישראל, עלינו להשלים את המלאכה ולהכריע את החמאס. זוהי בדיוק החלטת הקבינט שהתקבלה בשבוע שעבר. אנחנו נחושים לממשה, ואני מחזק את צה"ל, את כוחות הביטחון ואת אזרחי ישראל. יחד השגנו הישגים כבירים על אויבינו בכל החזיתות. יחד אנחנו נלחמים, ובעזרת השם, יחד נשלים את הניצחון ונסיים את המלחמה. תודה רבה.
And there's new reporting from Axios right now that says on Sunday, today, Egyptian and Qatari mediators met in Cairo, Egypt, with Hamas, presenting them with new ideas for a Gaza hostage and a ceasefire deal. Because the discussions did not achieve much progress, according to the report, Qatar's prime minister is actually flying into Egypt today to join these discussions. New reporting from Axios also says that on Sunday, Egyptian and Qatari mediators, like we said, met in Cairo, presented the terror group with new plans because these conversations did not go well. Now, Qatar's prime minister is flying into Egypt to discuss all of the possibilities that are currently on the table at this point in time. And we're going to bring a guest in right now to talk about all of this. Joining us now to discuss is Avi Melamed, a Middle East expert on this discussion when we are talking about the hostages. First, I want to hear your take on the Prime Minister of Qatar actually flying into Egypt to join these discussions. Obviously, it's a very high-profiled and level of a visit here. But what do we know from a situation like this? We know there's not a lot of progress made, but how likely is it that a deal could still be reached?
Well, Shosh, thank you for having me. I would expand a little bit the scope, and I will put it in a wider context. And the wider context is that recently there has been some increasing engagement of Egypt and Turkey in the story of the crisis in Gaza. It seems like that at this point, the Qatari is starting to understand that there are other players that could be involved or engaged in some sort of like breaking a deal. And up until now, the Qataris failed to provide, though they do have the pressure handles that they could apply on Hamas. It seems like the Qataris would like to, in a way, reposition themselves as a go-between. And hence, I would say the recent development when the Qatari Prime Minister went to Cairo to meet the Egyptians. We'll have, of course, to see what's going to be the result of that.
My follow-up question to you just on that is, how likely is it that a deal could be reached? What is Hamas waiting for at this point? And is there any possibility that Hamas could end up surrendering?
Let's start from the end. I've been saying all along the way, look, Hamas is not going to disappear and is not going to raise a white flag, so to speaking. I think we have to be realistic and to understand exactly what the picture is. Hamas, in the end of the day, is part and parcel of the Palestinian people. So all the talking about eliminating Hamas or surrendering, these are all irrelevant. In the end of the day, the big story is what will happen in the inner Palestinian discussion and in the regional discussion vis-a-vis Hamas. In other words, whether by the end of this whole thing, Hamas will be shrank to the point it will not be able any longer to dictate its radical agenda as it has been doing for the last 4 decades. If that will be the outcome, there is a very significant and positive outcome of the war. That should be the realistic outcome, because Hamas is not going to disappear. Hamas, ironically speaking, but not surprisingly, is building upon a couple of components that are actually not connected to Gaza directly. One, he builds upon international public opinion. We all witnessed the tsunami, sort of speaking, of diplomatic condemnations to Israel across the world. Public opinion is very much triggered and moved by the whole scenes coming from Gaza, regardless of the question to what extent they are accurate or inaccurate. And the other thing that Hamas is building, to a certain extent, is obviously the Israeli public opinion and the demand for the release of the hostages. In the end of the day, these are, roughly speaking, the fields where Hamas is maneuvering on his side in the context of the negotiations or non-negotiations with Israel, either directly or through mediators.
And just in terms of the military expansion that is likely going to happen very, very soon inside of Gaza City, what's your take on this? We're still kind of waiting for details to come out. But, you know, a lot of these families of hostages are worried that it could hurt and it could put their loved ones in jeopardy if they are hostages there. What is your take on something like this? Avi, can you hear us? I think we lost Avi here, but I actually want to bring in our ILTV anchor of Security Brief, Kalev Ben David. I know he is actually on the line right now to help us wrap up this conversation. Specifically, let's talk about this Gaza City military takeover that is expected, Kalev.
I'm saying all along of this phase that I found it very challenging to understand what exactly is.
Okay, we're going to cut out of Avi, who is still speaking, but we're just having some technical difficulties. Let's take Kalev. Let's talk to Kalev specifically about this military expansion inside of Gaza City. What's your position? What do you know about this? The details that still need to be worked out. What does the security cabinet still need to discuss in order for this military takeover to happen? And like we said, the government continues to say that Gaza City is a Hamas stronghold. Kalev.
Thing, a key element in Gaza.
Looks like we are also having some technical difficulties with Kalev. But let's move on until we can reconnect them. Israel's decision to actually facilitate an influx of aid into Gaza has caused a steep drop in the price of essential products in Gaza markets. Now, according to new data gathered by the Israeli security establishment, the sharp decline is a direct result of the massive influx of humanitarian aid that's arriving from Israel, Egypt, and of course these airdrops that are continuing to happen inside of the Gaza Strip by a growing number of countries also helping out. Prices reportedly dropped by as aid convoys have now flooded the strip with flour, rice, sugar, and other types of essential products. Now, some sample price drops include a kilo of flour was almost 100 shekel 3 weeks ago and is now about 18 shekel. Sugar is down from 300 a kilo to 50 a kilo. That's in shekels. Pasta was 100 shekels and 10 shekels, and rice, which was 120 shekel per kilo 3 weeks ago, which is also now 30 shekel. The data gathered by the Israeli security establishment has been confirmed by international organizations and aid groups operating in the area. Israel says the influx of aid will continue to grow, bring expected further price drops. Officials say that despite the improvement, Gaza's overall humanitarian crisis remains severe. Food is more available in markets, but not all residents can actually reach the markets or afford even the lower prices. Of course, the government here in Israel and also the American government continues to insist that Hamas is stealing the aid and diverting the convoys of trucks that are entering the Gaza Strip. There's also a severe shortage of medical supplies, clean water, fuel, and shelter. Kogat, the Israeli Defense Military unit that handles civilian affairs in Gaza, has announced plans to supply tents for Gazans lacking adequate shelter. I would love to join us again, Kalev Ben David. I think you're with us now. Can you hear me, Kalev? It's okay. We are having some technical difficulties, but that's totally okay. We are going to continue to try to reconnect with them until we hear their perspectives. Of course, we are going to be discussing all types of military operations that are still happening inside of the Gaza Strip, specifically this planned military takeover of Gaza City, in addition to the families of hostages who are out on the street protesting for their loved ones to come home. And after the IDF says it targeted an energy infrastructure site used by the Iranian proxy terror group, the Houthis, in Yemen, the strikes happened early Sunday morning. But we're now actually getting a first-hand look at the damage left behind in the capital of Yemen, Sana'a. The IDF said the strikes are in recent response to the attacks against Israel by the Houthis after they launched drones and missiles. After the attacks around midday on Sunday, sirens actually sounded here across central Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem after the IDF says a ballistic missile was launched from Yemen. As you can see on your screen right now with some video of plumes of smoke and large fires that happened as a result of these strikes. But remember, Israel is continuing to say they are targeting the Houthis because of their consistent attacks against the state of Israel. We also know that the ballistic missile attack against Israel yesterday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, the military confirmed the missile was successfully intercepted. And we are also going to bring you a very special story here in Israel. A scientific breakthrough, once again, is happening here in the country with an engineered spinal cord that is set to be transplanted for the very first time here in Israel. That's according to our partner network, Ynet. An Israeli team of researchers from Tel Aviv University succeeded in growing a human spinal cord stem cells. And this all happened after animal experiments proved satisfactory results. The Ministry of Health actually approved this, moving forward with human experimental operations with it. Now, the chief scientist tells Ynet the results have shown they can actually treat animals with chronic injuries, with more than 80% of animals returned to walking perfectly afterwards. We, of course, are still trying to work to reconnect our guests to discuss the latest situation happening on the Gaza Strip and, of course, the immense protests that happened yesterday as well. Let's take a look at some of that video, if we can, of the protests that were in Tel Aviv just yesterday. We had the Family Forum actually saying there were about 500,000 people that came out to the streets in central Tel Aviv to protest for the hostages there. We know that several families of hostages actually spoke. One of them being for the first time the family of the Nepali hostage, Bipin Joshi. His family is here in Israel for the very first time from Nepal, advocating for the release of their son, who is still in Hamas captivity. Of course, Bipin Joshi is one of the hostages. There have not been any signs of life from him. The only sign of life was after he was taken on October 7th at Al-Shifa Hospital in the Gaza Strip. He was dragged inside of that hospital. Absolutely horrific video, but his family is here to fight for his release, with so many people just hoping that a deal will come very, very soon, as Hamas clearly has apparently and reportedly come back to the table to discuss a possible ceasefire and a hostage deal at this point in time. Okay, seems as if we actually have Kalev here to join us back again. Kalev, can you hear us? Okay, looks like Kalev, we are still having some hiccups, but that's okay. I'm going to read you off some latest updates that we're continuing to get into our newsroom at this point in time.
Shosh, I can hear you. Can you hear me clearly?
Kalev, we can hear you. It's a little bit choppy. We're going to see how far we can get. But tell me about this military expansion in Gaza City. What details do we know at this point in time?
Shosh, can you hear me?
Okay, another technical difficulty. But going back to the latest, right now the Times of Israel is actually reporting at this point in time that a new Gaza plan would free 10 hostages in the first phase. That's according to reporting from the Times of Israel. As we know, Hamas apparently has come back to the table, speaking with mediators from Egypt and Qatar. We know there was actually a deadline for Hamas to respond to some type of negotiation and deal at some point today. The Times of Israel is saying that a source from the Islamic Jihad terror group fighting alongside Hamas in Gaza actually tells a news outlet that a proposed ceasefire plan presented to Hamas today involves, quote, a ceasefire agreement lasting 60 days, during which 10 Israeli hostages would be released alive, along with a number of bodies. We know that, of course, there was a Witkoff proposal on the table, which sought, for the first phase, 10 hostages to be released. So right now we are going to take a look at what U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee said about his first 100 days of taking the position that he's currently in. Take a listen.
In a video released Sunday, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee reflected on his first 100 days in the role, days that he says have been filled with milestones in diplomacy, security, and faith. Huckabee, the first evangelical Christian to serve as U.S. ambassador to Israel, said President Trump personally called him after the election with a clear directive to enact the White House's policies on the ground in Jerusalem.
Shortly after his election, President Trump called me with a clear directive to enact his policies as the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. As I reflect on my first 100 days as ambassador, I'm proud of all that we here at the embassy and this administration have accomplished.
He pointed to Operation Midnight Hammer as a prime example of American military might, saying the U.S. obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Huckabee also praised efforts that secured the release of American citizen Gideon Alexander, reunited with his family after being held captive.
And we continue to advocate for the freedom of every last hostage held in Gaza. And thanks to our advocacy, hand in hand with the Israeli government, we helped remove burdensome bureaucratic hurdles to enable Christian pilgrims to once again visit the Holy Land without impediment.
Huckabee said the U.S. and Israel share values that advance President Trump's vision of regional security and prosperity. He called serving as ambassador the greatest privilege of his life and vowed the best is yet to come.
We're just getting started. Watch what happens.
And that was our Mayan Hoffman reporting on U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee's 100 days since taking this position. Of course, he has been very active on social media, putting out real-time information, specifically about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, this American and Israeli-backed way of getting aid into the Gaza Strip, which has delivered more than 120 million meals so far. And GHF says they continue to be wildly successful, although they are continuing to receive scrutiny internationally. We also want to bring you a very special story honoring the survivors and the victims of the Nova Music Festival. Take a listen.
In a night full of joy mixed with grief, memory mixed with resilience, the second annual Nova Healing Festival commenced at the Yalkon Park in Tel Aviv. The event marks nearly 2 years since the massacre that took 378 beautiful souls. 44 hostages were taken from the Nova Music Festival. 4 have been rescued, 10 released, 15 bodies have been recovered, and 15 still remain held captive in Gaza. Organized by the Nova Tribe Community Association, survivors and bereaved families, the event set out to transform grief into a shared space of healing. This year's performers included Yuval Rafael, Israeli Eurovision representative for 2025, who survived the massacre that day. This event highlights the meaning of the Nova Tribe slogan, "We will dance again," dancing in honor of those who can't dance with us today. While grief remains palpable, the Nova Healing Concert offered a glimpse of unity, of defiance, and love through music, a refusal to let tragedy define the lives it touched. 50 hostages remain in Gaza, including 15 members of the Nova community, but only 20 of the 50 are believed to be alive.
Incredibly emotional report there. Our Devo Klein reporting on the beautiful memorial that is taking place in honor of the victims from the Nova Music Festival and the survivors from that very day on October 7th. I want to just bring in some more updates that we're getting in real time. Around 180 tons of aid dropped into Gaza. That's a total number that we are hearing right now. Actually, it's 180 pallets of humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip that was airdropped today. That's according to the IDF. Part of the aircraft that has dropped this aid is from the help of Jordan, the UAE, Germany, Belgium, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Singapore, and Indonesia today. All of this just happening today. 180 pallets of humanitarian aid. Each pallet actually contains around 1 ton of food. This is all according to the IDF. We know that Indonesia actually started helping these aid droppings just the other day for the very first time. So we're continuing to follow all of the humanitarian efforts Israel is orchestrating inside of the Gaza Strip to help the people who are continue to suffer from not getting proper food and equipment they're supposed to, after we're hearing reports of Hamas continuing to divert convoys of aid trucks as well. We're also following the developments on a possible negotiations that are happening at this point in time in Egypt, between Egypt, Qatar, and Hamas, as it seems like Hamas has come back to the table. Of course, we're also reporting on the massive developments of about 500,000 people coming out to the streets in Tel Aviv, protesting for not only an end to the war, but for the hostages to be released. Of course, at this point in time, the ball is in the court of Hamas, the terror group who has decided to come back to the table and negotiate. That's according to reports right now. But take a listen to what the mother of hostage Matan Zangauker said just yesterday at this enormous protest advocating for the release of her son, who's 25 years old.
שורף לי הלב מרוב געגוע. הלב שלי שרוף כולו בגלל מתן שלי. מתן, אני, עם שלם, אנחנו עושים את כל מה שאנחנו יכולים בשבילך, בשביל כל החטופים והחטופה. אז מתן ביקש מקודם בסרטון רעש. תנו למתן רעש! מתן שלי, המבט השקט שלך בסוף הסרטון מלווה אותי כשאני מתהפכת במיטה בלילות. אני מדמיינת אותך מביט לי בעיניים, וכואב לי. כואב לי, שורף לי בנשמה מרוב געגוע. שורף לי שאני לא יכולה לחבק, לא יכולה לשמוע, ולא יכולה להחזיק אותך.
More information about the negotiations happening between Egypt, Hamas, and Qatar. Right now, we know that Palestinians official actually confirmed that Hamas has been presented with a Gaza deal as these talks continue to intensify in Cairo. They received this new proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza, calling for an initial 60-day truce and hostage release in 2 different phases. That's according to reporting seen on AFP. They say, quote, the proposal is a framework agreement to launch negotiations on a permanent ceasefire. We know that the Prime Minister's office continues to say they are looking for a comprehensive deal that will bring home all 50 hostages in one phase. In addition, it's in line with what the Trump administration is also saying, calling it an all or nothing deal. We know that Witkoff indicated the same want just a few weeks ago to the families of hostages. That is a wrap here on ILTV on the Hour. Thanks so much for being with us and joining us as we continue to follow all of these updates in real time. See you soon.